Welcome to the Talent Lab Solutions EdTech Insight Series, everyone. I'm Michael Lopong, one of the founders of Talent Lab Solutions. At Talent Labs, our mission is to help companies in the education space solve their problems as they work to unlock the potential of all learners.
I'm Chris Blackett. Today, we're joined by Poonam Ribadia, who spent nearly 8 years at 2U in various roles, most recently as a Partnerships and Customer Success Manager. Poonam, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to chat and share some of my insider knowledge and tidbits and experiences. Excited to chat.
Awesome. We're so excited to dive into your experiences and get your insider perspective on 2U's journey. Let's get started.
Okay.
So my first question is, Poonam, could you tell us about your role at 2U and how it evolved over your 8-year tenure?
Yeah, I think I had probably 100 different unofficial roles and responsibilities, but I had 4 official roles. So I started off as a content implementation coordinator, then a content development coordinator, senior content lead, and then a curriculum manager, which again, titles don't translate to like the equivalent of a partner success manager. Was my last role. There was lots of changes, just lots of, I think when we weren't, it wasn't a proper startup when I started. It was like a little bit more than a startup, but like, what do they say? Like you wear a bunch of hats, you just like learn and you just do things when it's needed. So a lot of that was my experience. A lot of just like, here's your role and responsibilities, but here's like 5 million other things that we need to do because we're acquiring, changing, all these different things. So I could say very exciting and high pressure all the time. And I think they say that that's like typical with startups. 2U wasn't a startup anymore, but yeah. It evolves. I would say like the whole like kind of journey was I was doing lots of hands-on work. Like one of the first things I did was like learn how to code, like very elementary level stuff. So I was building courses. And then by the end of my career at 2U was managing like a portfolio of partners and making sure like the health of the program and the partnership was good, finances, stuff like that. So very, very granular hands-on to like more strategic higher level work.
And when you first started at 2U, how many people were at the company?
I don't remember, but I will. This is like a funny tidbit. When I interviewed with them, the offices, so there were several offices. The New York office was in Chelsea Piers. And the team I was interviewing with was in this weird, like closet looking space. And it was building as SVU. So I walked in and there were like 30 cops. And I'm like, I'm in the wrong place. And then I went in.
The same building as the Special Victims Unit?
Yeah, correct. So,
Wow.
yeah, I walked in, I'm like, in the wrong place. And then I walked out and then I walked back in. I'm like, no, this is the right place. And they're like, no, we're extras. Like, we're here filming. Like, and I walked into the office where I was getting interviewed and there were like 2 people and they were both wearing headphones. They like look at me and I look at them and I left again. I was like, I'm still in the wrong place. This isn't it. And then finally I call. I'm like, is this the office? And they're like, yeah, you're in the right space. So from my understanding, I thought there was like 2 people.
Yeah.
I see there were more, but like, I then learned there's probably like less than 1,000 when I started collectively, but the office I was in, there were like 2 people and then we scaled and then it ended up being like, I don't know how many people. I started with like, I think I was one of the first coordinators hired and then the department scaled to like hundreds of people. I don't know if I really answered your question. There was like a
You
side.
did? And I like the
but it was
story.
like-
Please. You probably made it into a like an SVU episode.
Literally,
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's really interesting to hear, I think that how long you had been there and the evolution of the company. So I mentioned earlier that I worked at Guild and I feel like Guild 2U talk about being like 3-sided marketplaces. Is that how you ever talked about 2U? 3-sided markets, places at Guild. We work with employers, students, academic institutions. And I feel like 2U, you had direct consumers, you had universities, and then you also had employers, right? And so making money from each side of those like users. And so I was curious, like in your customer success role, who were your main partners that you worked with?
So I'll say with a lot of my responses throughout this conversation, everything was very siloed and there was tons of gatekeeping. So when you say, I'm like, yeah, I saw the emails. I remember high level presentations with Chip just saying Guild 5 million times. But like, was aware of what we were doing, like the intricate stuff. Not so much. So most of my work was with our enterprise partners, post-grad or like the higher education piece. And then once we started doing undergrad partnerships, I was on that side of things. So like the edX, the guilds, like the corporate partners, that was just not on my plate. And frankly, I'm one of the type of people, I'm like, if I don't have to deal with it, I'm not going to put it in my brain. So like, okay,
Yeah.
if I'm working on Guild, I'm just not going to worry about it.
Which is interesting because if you have enterprise customers, like who were some of the enterprise customers that two you worked with?
Like the big flashy names like Harvard, Yale, USC,
Okay.
like those.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then I feel like we were also probably, you were guilds, and two, you were also probably competing while also working together, which is
Oh yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And so with the academic institution, what was like your role? Was it curating the programs that they offered on edX or?
So I didn't work with edX. It was mostly just like the 2U academic partners. And like I said, my role like always evolved. So first it was very hands off. I wasn't partner facing, whether it was like with the dean or faculty. Like at first I was just doing my own independent work and doing deliverables. And then as time evolved and like more towards the end of my career, it was a lot of like, here's an existing partner. We're kind of steady. Just make sure the finances are on point, biannual curriculum analyses, and figure out like what needs work, what courses need iteration, stuff like that, and making sure that whatever their needs are, they meaning like the faculty, faculty, and then at that point, like program leadership, connecting with the deans and stuff, and like the chairs, like what courses do you want to add? What can need improving? What new courses can we add to the catalog? Stuff like that, and then like behind the scenes, just making sure all the finances were on point, which started taking a lot more my time naturally because the finances are tied to the health of the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I definitely want to like dig into this piece about financial health. But Michael, do you want to ask the next one? Then I think we can maybe circle back into financial health as a metric.
Yeah, your details about how kind of your work life and what you did are really interesting because that's a lot of the work I did at Multiverse, working on the programs there. What initially drew you to you, and kind of what was the environment like when you worked there?
Sure. So there's another funny story. I feel like I always have like a little story with all my experiences. So I didn't know what 2U was, but prior to 2U, I had an internship at the Department of Education in DC. And at the time, Jim Shelton was the deputy secretary. And naturally, like you follow people, you see what they're up to on LinkedIn and stuff. I'm like, oh, he pivoted to 2U. Let me see what 2U is doing or what that's all about. So looking on the website, going to the careers page because I'm actively looking for a job. And I just kind of just like, when you're mass applying, you just like apply and then like you're like, okay, whatever. And then I got an interview and this goes back to when I went to my interview. I just like walked into this weird space and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. But the interaction I had with Michael Letter, shout out Michael. He was the head of the department I was interviewing for, and he was very candid and transparent. He's like, we're building something. I don't really have all the details, but I like your energy. I think you'd be a good fit. And I was like, let me just take a chance. I like the vibes. I like the people and I like the vision. I'm like passionate about education. So if that's the mission and that's what the company is doing, like, why not? There was alignment on things. So it's kind of like, it just kind of like happened. I wasn't like necessarily seeking it out. And then, so yeah. And as for what the environment was like, it goes back to like being very siloed. I think from my personal experience of someone who started at like the Chelsea Piers office, we were very siloed. I didn't know what other teams or what other people were at the company, but the small pod of people I worked with are like still some of my lifelong friends. And it's just people like really brilliant, smart people and just like welcoming and like willing to teach and like mentor and just kind of like be a group. Like there was true collaboration. There was true like a welcoming spirit and just kind of like we'll figure it out together. So at first I really loved the work environment. And then as I continued as the company changed, I like started to love it less. But my initial reaction or when I look back on things, I'm like, it's a net positive. Like I always enjoyed the people that I worked with.
I was just gonna say I feel like the people at 2U, I like that you brought up that the people that you worked with were wonderful because I think like you did have a really good mission, right? Like it was really trying to revolutionize education. And that draws a certain type of person.
Yeah. I feel like education in general, though, like you have to be passionate unless you're like in one of those like engineering roles where your job is to like not focus on the mission and you're just like if you're in like content, curriculum, like those things require, I feel like some sort of passion. So I think that's a lot of why like-minded people working together. Almost like young. I don't know, like is that ageist? I don't know. When you're like enthusiastic, younger crowd of people, like in a startup vibe in New York, like what's not great about that?
Yeah. And it's so important early on in these startups and these mission-based startups because it propels people further. People are working hard. People are motivated because they all know they're fighting for a good thing, right? And
Yeah.
so I've definitely experienced that in my past. One of the things you mentioned was like feeling like things were siloed. I've definitely experienced that at places I've worked at. I think there's a lot of things that can contribute to that. What's your thought on what contributes to that to you?
I think it's a lot from my perspective. And this is all just my own thoughts and my perspective on it. I think people are just overwhelmed. Like, I always like to give people benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, you want to blame someone, you want to put a name or a face to things. I think once everyone is overwhelmed and there's lots of change, there's only certain priorities you can focus on, or like leadership can focus on. So like, are they going to focus on like, let's make sure everyone is happy and collaborated, and like, let's set up these happy hours, or like stuff like to like, that was just not a priority, I feel like, for them. It just like exacerbates more and more the more stress and the more work you have on your plate. So, and I think another one, this is another very specific example. At first, when 2U was just 2U and we didn't have any other acquisitions or partners or mergers, everyone was on Slack, everyone was communicating. But then when you bring in
Yeah.
other companies or other employees and stuff, and you're trying to integrate everything, but you don't take a minute to pause, build a foundation, and really think those things through, there's just natural silos, because again, that's not a priority for them. Like, they're just trying to get their work done.
Yeah.
And then the one little tidbit, like, they took Slack away from us. So I'm like, how do you want us to collaborate and like try to work with each other if you take away Slack? Half of the people are in Slack and the rest of us are back on Google. I don't know what that stuff is called, like Google whatever. The version.
Something or
Yeah.
whatever.
So that was one of my pet peeves. And I'm like, all right, fine. If you're not even allowing me to collaborate in an effective way, I'm just now going to silo myself. I'm just like, leave me out of it then.
Yeah.
Probably not a good attitude, but
There's so much I want to talk to you about, but I'm really happy we're having this conversation, because I think one of the things that Michael and I really wanted to do is like learn from people who are actually in like operational roles and like doing things at these companies. But I think it's really easy for me as like an outsider to read all these like postmortems onto you, right? And talk and like hear about like the edX acquisition, and like they acquired the wrong subset of users, or all of these other things. But then you hear about, like actually day to day, there were things like taking Slack away. Yeah. Or the brutal, like the culture, like tension that can happen with acquisitions. Like, we just acquired another company 2 years ago at Amplify, and we were talking to Jorge Mazal from Duolingo, the CPO. And he was like, when you acquire a company, the bigger company is oftentimes trying to like inject a culture change, right? And they want this small company to change the culture at the bigger company. But then the like bureaucracy, the inertia of the big company like stops that from happening. I don't know if that resonates, but it just like you talking about like acquiring companies but not fully integrating them sort of reminded me of that tension and friction.
I mean, not that it's supposed to make me feel better, but I was like, oh, is this like a 2U problem, or is this just like an everywhere corporate problem? Which I'm like, it's a everywhere corporate problem. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, you have to be so intentional about communication. I think when a company is small or an organization is small, it's just something that happens naturally. But as the company grows larger and larger, when you not only have to be intentional, you have to set aside resources and capacity for that, right?
Yeah.
So people hate on like project managers and product managers about like what are they doing? Like, they're doing all the communication that you're not doing because you're coding or whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
These people are holding everything together and managing stakeholders in a way that allows you to do your job. And so that's something that has to be intentionally designed for.
Yeah. And I think so many companies are messing with, like, we have an issue with it at Amplify. Guild, less so because it's tiny. Samsung was the most siloed place I've ever worked. It's like, there's no getting around it.
I like that you pointed out, and like a shout out to project managers, because I feel like they're always underrated and they're first ones to get tapped.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I feel like, and when they do like the retrospectives or the postmortems, and it's like, yeah, anyone could have told you that. Like, everyone, this is not a new problem. Like, if you take away the foundation or the person who's like keeping it together and flowing, like everyone can do the individual work, but to bring it all together, like you still need that person. And I feel like that they're always rated or undervalued.
Or sometimes like I find myself having to flex to be a project manager. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. I need a dedicated.
It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to manage.
Yeah.
It's a lot to connect. You need to be the holder of all things. You will. So
this is a fun one, that your next one, Michael, for the changes.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the changes that were happening at 2U over your 8 years. What other significant changes did you observe during your time there, both positive and negative?
Positive. I loved. It goes back to the mission, like seeing the numbers, seeing how many enrollments, how many people, like when we did like the interviews where you heard someone's story, or I heard like a student or like all the positive changes there, like seeing how much or how rapidly we were growing, how much innovation we were bringing, like new programs, new types of coursework, all that stuff was really nice to see and to be a part of. I think most of the positive changes were more like the big picture ones, like how is the company doing? How are we impacting real people in their real lives? Like there was one statistic they would always share, like how many babies were born with the help of 2U midwives. Like that's like such a nice, wholesome, like step here, like
Yeah.
that, like that's like something lovely and great. Like that sticks with me all the time. Or like how many social workers have we like pushed through the program and now they're like actually helping real people. So stuff like that was always like lovely and positive. I think a lot of my negative like experiences or changes, I'm gonna like just more on a personal level, like as things are changing, it goes back to I feel like everything always goes back to like lack of effective leadership. I saw like there was less collaboration, less time for really listening to employees, like the ones who are like doing the work. It used to be that like very open, candid, like that was one of our guiding principles, and Chip
Yeah.
was very into that. Like you can chat me anytime, you can email me anytime, and then it started turning into like, okay, we're on all company calls and now the chat is turned off, or we're on all company call and now it's a webinar versus a call where people can interact because they didn't really want the dialogue
Yeah.
and the grievances and the feedback from the people doing the work. So I think that towards the end of my career was like something I was like, I'm not thrilled about this. A lot of other employees are not thrilled about it. I'm like, there's a whole website where people can go talk shit. So that clearly is not a good look. I think just like the change it, like changing as a company, then changing the culture of the employees who are working. Like there's now like more, what's a politically or not politically, like what's the equivalent of beef? Like when you're beefing with your like colleagues at work, like that's like not healthy. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
like we're all on the same team. We're all working towards the same goal, but now we're all beefing internally. Like that's not healthy. Like that's not positive. Caused a lot of strain. And then I don't know, a lot of it is just like a blur. I feel like when you're just constantly like trying to survive and going through like lots of change, it almost just kind of like I don't know what parts were positive and what parts were negative is kind of how I look back on it now. And in the beginning, it was mostly positive. I didn't have any grievances or like negative things to say. And then towards the end of my career, I was like, I'm feeling a net negative versus a net positive.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned like so leadership sort of stopped investing in some of the like culture building and then didn't sort of like continue dialogues with employees. And I wondered to what extent was that a reflection of maybe like declining like business health, and like when things are good, it's easy to have fun. And then when shit hits the fan, you shut down employees' voices. Sounds like it.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I always like to be like holistic. Like work is work, but there's a whole world happening. There's people's lives. A lot of it is all interconnected. So towards the end, like COVID happened, Black Lives Matter happened. There was a lot of just stuff happening in the world that like then impacted the culture and the vibe at work. Like it's impossible to separate what's happening in people's personal lives and in the world from how they're being at work. So I always like to think that like give people grace. There's a lot of other factors, but if we were to purely just think about the corporate aspect of it, like I think that's hard to do just because there's other pressures. The company is not here's a hot take. Every corporation just lies. That's just the truth of things. You have to lie to your employees and say everything is going well because you need them to keep grinding. You're not going to tell your employees that things aren't going well, like because then like that's not good. So like I feel like there was a lot of like everything is great, but actually behind the scenes things are not great. But we're trying to convince everyone and lie to y'all to like keep the momentum going for the work to just keep getting done.
Yeah.
That's probably across the board. That's like a universal truth. Like no company is ever going to be like, hey, we're not doing great. Like I don't think that happens. Even up until like the bankruptcy, they're like everything is great. Everything is great. I'm like, then how are y'all bankrupt? Like how
Yeah.
did that happen if everything was great for however many years? So
Yeah.
I don't know how I went on this tangent, but I'm just like a lot of it is like it's all interconnected, and it just comes down to like back to like a priority. Like what is their priority? Can they really be channeling energy into like employees who have grievances and complaints, or do they just need to do the work to make sure we still stay afloat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen some extreme examples of this with Byju's and
Oh, yeah.
even what's SBF company
FTX.
FTX. Yeah, just everything's going well even after they went completely bankrupt. You know, it's just a mistake. You know, we'll figure things out. No, just admit the truth.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of trust and transparency and confidence for a leader to do that, right? And I know, you know, and they get a lot of pressure too. So I know many leaders aren't willing to do that and aren't able to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because then like you're seeing it sort of with Boeing right now. You enter this like doom loop where like you finally admit that things are going horribly, and then like your employees are like, "Why are you here? What's the point?"
And also, like, if it does work out, everything's okay.
Yeah.
That's the hope and optimism of someone who started a business, right? That's the hope
Yeah.
of an entrepreneur. And that's how a lot of entrepreneurs, raise money, right? And that's how they stay afloat until everything comes crashing down.
Fake it till you make it. And when you don't make it,
I'm curious, did like the composition of leadership at 2U change too? Like, did you see, like I don't know, as it matures, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Like, did that affect the culture at all or no?
percent. So this is another universal truth. I'm not the only one. So like hopefully people who are watching this don't have any issues with me saying it. There's just a lot of nepotism or like people do favors. You can't just give someone a promotion and like throw them like just keep making them grow with the company because you know them or like so and so is friends with so and so or I owe someone a favor. Like, yeah, that's nice, but that's not actually helping the health of the company and help us like propel and like succeed. Like there was a lot of that, like on the C-suite level, and then even on the granular like middle management level. And that was an ongoing actual thing. Like since I started, that was an issue, and then even after I left, like I've heard that still is an issue now. That like leadership was picked, maybe not who had the loudest voice, who was friends with who had a connection versus who's the best candidate, who's the person who is the most skilled at achieving whatever they needed to achieve. So yeah, the leadership thing, I think. And I don't know if that's I know that's a very specific to you thing, but I'm curious, is that an issue at your companies or places you guys have worked?
I think there are often questions about why people get in certain roles or why people stay at certain roles. I've definitely seen that in, other companies, especially if, it is clear that they are not meeting expectations, at least from people kind of on the ground and working in other places of management.
Yeah. I know at Guild, one of the reasons I left was you would see people get promoted because their like manager really liked them as a human, but maybe they were not the best person for the role. And so that sort of like was frustrating to see. But Guild hired a lot of people externally instead of promoting people internally. And so like on the converse side, I think that was like a really frustrating thing to see.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like these companies who are like focused on upskilling and reskilling really failing at their core mission internally. That's something that I always question. I always found interesting.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, I could spend a whole hour talking about
You have. I've been there.
I have. Poonam, I'm curious. There are a lot of companies in the like upskilling MOOC sort of space. And I'm curious from your perspective, like what did 2U do particularly well compared to their competitors?
I think that the one thing that was I don't know if this is still like an appropriate term to use, but we always called it white glove service. The partners were always priority. I think if you were to go and ask, I mean, maybe now their opinions would be different, the partners, but they received the white glove service. Like anything they asked, we kind of delivered. We would go above and beyond. Like the content we delivered was amazing. When you look at the NPS scores or like the student outcome, like I think there's a lot of great things that were being delivered in the outcomes. Like that was all good. And also like with anything, you're selling something, you need an effective sales team. Like you need someone to go and charm these like, I don't know, people at universities are maybe not the most forward thinking. Like you need to do a lot of like massaging and selling and like making it seem like shiny and flashy and like that it's going to benefit them. I think the sales team was like really good at doing that. I didn't have interaction with them, but it's like, how do you convince Harvard to partner with you? It's Harvard, but they were able to do it. So something they're doing is clearly effective. So like, if you start like the biggest universities and then on a global level, like we're partnering with these people. So something is clearly working and they appreciate it and they see the value in it. So shout out to whoever was doing the sales and whatever they were doing, and like it was effective. I don't know what the competitors like. I also don't think, and this is my own ignorance purely because I'm like, okay, if it doesn't matter to me, I'm not going to really look into it. But like, I'm not really sure what other massive competitor there was. I think 2U there was a moment when 2U was like the biggest one. Like,
yeah.
Or maybe for a long time. I think for my whole career, 2U was like the main company doing these types of things. Like there were competitors, but they weren't offering the level of quality and the level of service that 2U was offering. Like it's like when a partner's evaluating who they should partner with, it's kind of like a no-brainer. Like when the partners are Yale, NYU, Harvard, like I don't know. It just seems like if I was a decision maker, like why wouldn't I pick 2U?
Yeah. Now that makes
Yeah.
sense. That I think the like brand differentiating. I took like an Cornell cert from you, but I think some of the competitors now are like Udemy or Udemy, who I think is possibly won the market in some ways. But
Yeah, on the other side of the coin, it's clear that 2U faced some significant challenges, especially with the edX acquisition. As an insider, what do you think were some of the biggest missteps?
From my experience, this goes back to like the silo.
Mhm.
And there's this saying that is always used, and I like laugh a little, but I hate it so much. It's like building or flying a plane while you're building it or building. I get that that is like a normal and like a very just like reality of like workplaces, but it's just like that is going to be the downfall. Like that is going to be the problem that you can't go back and fix. Like you have to kind of slow down. In my opinion, slow down, be strategic, like build a foundation, like figure out what you're doing, and then like kick off and like start flying the plane. But I noticed there was a lot of like, let's just jump into it. Everyone like put your big boy, big girl pants on and like, let's just do it. And I'm like, that has never been effective from my experience. I think that was one of like a not so great decision or way of
Yeah.
approaching it. And then I like laugh because at first when we had Slack, everyone was sharing, like you can share gifts and stuff. You know, the one with the dog who's sitting in the fire and he's like,
Yeah.
everything's fine the day. Like, yeah, if you have to use that every day to explain what your work is like something is not working. And then they took away Slack, so now I can't even share the GIF to explain or GIF of how I feel every day. Like it's funny to me now, like retrospectively, I'm like, yeah, maybe if we kept Slack, then maybe things would be a lot better. Like we're a tech company. You need to have the teams interact with each other. You can't silo them. But yeah, that like little funny joke of like I can't even use the everything is fine GIF anymore because I don't have Slack.
Yeah.
And now everything is definitely not fine.
When you acquired edX, what was like the mood at the company? Do you remember? Did they like communicate a vision for even purchasing edX from your perspective? Or
I know it was very exciting. It was supposed to be like big, like what an amazing thing that we're doing. I know it was like all positive. Everyone was excited. I'm trying to remember the timeline of. I think this is when everyone was remote, and so like when I look at my life, I'm like, it was remote. I live by myself. It's COVID. Things are not great. Like I'm like, I don't know. I'm like.
2021.
Yeah, like this goes back to like everything was a blur for me. I just remember the edXing being very exciting. The comms were very exciting. Having a not come and speak, like there was a lot of really good, exciting dialogue and like narratives happening. But again, I didn't work on that collab or like I wasn't working with stuff. So I don't really. I kind of just like let me stay in my lane and focus on what I need to focus on.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the timeline because it did. So it happened 2021. And this was always something I had not issues with Guild. I don't think Guild did it to the extent that maybe 2U did by like acquiring $800 million in debt to purchase edX. $800 million in debt. And like Guild, I think, did this to a smaller extent, but like you mistake the jump in usage or product market fit during the pandemic, and you think that that is now like sustainable. And like, I'm sure with remote learning, people were like, look at these numbers. And then it ended up a horrible mistake. But,
So many companies fell into that trap.
oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, multiverse, I feel like too, probably, right? Like maybe not.
Yeah, I think a little with the money that was flowing around, right? You know, you act now, think later, right? Who's to know if that was the right move or not?
Yeah. Poonam, I'm curious. So if you were, let's say you were on the leadership team of 2U during this time period, like what would be some of the things you might have done differently?
I don't even know. So my response will be like, I don't know if they already did it. Like, I think a lot of times for big changes like this, it is nice to have a third party consultant come in and take like a look and like advise of what you should do versus just like everyone just going in a boardroom and like thinking that they know what they're doing. Like, I don't know if they hired a consultant like give their thought and perspective on how to effectively do or manage change management. How do you do a proper merger? Like stuff like that. I think unless it happened and they did an ineffective job at it, like I think that would have been of value.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just slowing down. I think just like really just slowing down, I think always just helps. Like take a minute to really think or like let's vet let's think on it for however many days or weeks or whatever. Like it almost felt like, let's just make a decision and run with it and then we'll figure it out. And it's like that usually is never a good way of approaching things, especially
Yeah.
at this scale. Like we're not talking like we're talking about like millions and millions of dollars. Like this is like merging lots of different things, lots of different workflows, cultures, people, teams. Also now we like scaled, we were working around the clock. Like we had vendors in India, we're working with employees in offices in South Africa. You have folks in like all over the
Mhm.
place. That was another, I feel like, challenge of like, how do we get everyone aligned and working, which seems like a problem that shouldn't exist. Like we live in a globalized world. Like it shouldn't be that hard to work with people in different countries or time zones. But for me, for my team, I know that was like a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, just even the amount of friction with teams in the same country, like I think it's just natural.
Yeah, I kind of went on a tangent with that one, but yeah, if I was leadership, I haven't really thought about that, but I'm like, it always, for me, I think it always comes down to communication. Like, are we effectively communicating and then like, uh, evaluating things or communicating the change to employees? If there's leadership who are just making decisions and they don't explain the why, like I will always keep going back to this Slack example. Okay, if you're going to take away Slack, can you please explain why you're making this decision rather than just be like, here's a decision and you guys just have to deal with it? Like stuff like that. Or leadership changes if you're firing someone or getting rid of someone or asking someone to leave. Like, let's maybe take a minute to pause and realize what they were doing wrong. And let's get someone in that position who knows what they should, like, do a better job, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I do like that you keep bringing up the like playing, building the plane without flying it, because you do hear it all the time. And, I don't even know if I'm sure too, you had consultants in the room, but I sometimes worry that consultants just do like confirm, they just have like confirmation bias. They just say like whatever you want to hear or know. But I do think your point of consultants who maybe specialized in mergers and acquisitions, like that is something I have seen poorly done at every single company I've been at. Is like the acquisition is a really painful process, and yeah,
I think it has something to do with like what you mentioned, Poonam, around like slowing down, intentionality. I think, obviously business is competitive, and in competition, speed is a value. But if you do not slow down and you're running, you may trip and fall flat on your face. It takes a lot of courage to step back, and strong decision making to step back and think intentionally about how to make these big decisions and follow through with them and communicate them. And you also have to care. You have to care about your people, actually, right? And you have to acknowledge that these people are your business, and without them, you have nothing. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. Your perspective was extremely valuable. You were a long time insider to you. Man, it was a pleasure speaking with you.
yeah, you had the best stories. Never get rid of Slack. It's like,
I'm like, how many more times can I mention the Slack? That's just me being petty.
works for Slack, actually.
Oh yeah, I'm a Slack spokesperson. This was actually a paid sponsorship.
We hope so, eventually.
But thank you for having me. This was fun and interesting, and I'm glad that I was able to share some of the insider stuff.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
To our listeners, if you found this discussion enlightening, please like, subscribe, and share. And join us next time as we continue to explore the cutting edge of education and technology. For more information on Talent Lab Solutions and our work in the education and workforce development space, visit our website at talentlabsolutions.com and follow the Talent Lab Solutions Substack. Thank you for tuning in to Talent Lab EdTech Insight Series.